Greetings. Today we're here to talk about Dade County Parks, Virginia, the historic Virginia Key Beach. I have a special guest today with us, N. Patrick Range II, who is the chairman of the historic Virginia Key Beach Park Trust. And he's going to give us a little bit about the history of the beach and more details about supporting the building a museum at Virginia Key Beach. Greetings, Patrick, and thank you for joining us today.
Good day, Brother Roberts. Thank you so much for this great opportunity to be with you and to share with our community kind of what's going on with Virginia Key Beach today, and to encourage support for this bastion of our history, which still stands and represents so much of our local history here in Miami-Dade County as a Black people. So I'm very proud and very pleased to be able to be with you today to share a little bit of information with you and with our community about what we need to be doing to ensure that this bastion of our history is here for years to come.
Well, I thank you for that. And one of the things I am most pleased with is that you're honoring the history and the legacy of your forefathers and foremothers. I know that your grandfather and your grandmother were very strong advocates for our community and making sure that they invested into making sure that there was equity and inclusion for all, and making sure that we had access to just places of leisure like Virginia Key Beach. And I want you to bring us up to speed to where we are now in terms of what things have been happening and what the trust that you're a chair of has been dealing with as far as this property is concerned.
Okay. So essentially, the trust came about due to concerns from citizens about the use of Virginia Key Beach. Obviously, for many years since 1945, our community enjoyed Virginia Key Beach as a recreation space where people would come to gather for all sorts of different events, weddings, baptisms, birthdays, almost anything that you could think of, picnics. All of these sorts of things were beloved activities that we enjoyed as a people on Virginia Key Beach. Eventually, as the civil rights movement came in and took place, and other places were opened up for us to be able to recreate, Virginia Key Beach fell into disrepair. And really was not being used during a period from, say the 80s, and the city actually chose to close the park in 1982 due to high maintenance costs and things of that nature. And so from after 1982, the park was not used, again, fell into disrepair, and eventually a developer came forward and presented an idea to the city of wanting to place an eco resort on the property. This information came out, and citizens were very upset that this property was being considered for private use. Obviously, we had the history of our use, from the 40s. And then, as you may remember, Brother Ruben, as I do, in later years, even after 82, the city would open up the park for certain events like Splashdown.
That's right, Splashdown.
And things of that nature. So, spent some nice days out at the beach enjoying those sorts of activities.
Right.
And so those things help to keep the park relevant, in the minds of the Black community. And so when this idea of building a resort on the property was presented, many folks came out in protest. And not just Black folks, also environmentalists who recognized that the park also was an environmental gem.
That's right.
In that we have a number of endangered species like sea turtles, also some protected flora and fauna, plant life and so forth. And so we are not just a historical gem, we are really an environmental gem. And the citizens of Miami and Miami-Dade County said, no, we don't want to see a private resort here. This land should be open to the public, to be enjoyed by all in perpetuity. And so a task force was created, and it was called the Virginia Key Beach Task Force. And citizens fought to ensure that monies were set aside to bring back the park to its original composition. And as a result, later that year, and this was around 1999, the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust was established on the back of the task force. And so the trust itself became the arm which would essentially govern the use of the park. And so that gave citizens an opportunity to have real input with the city commission and staff to give direction to what would take place here at the Virginia Key Beach Park. And so a master plan was developed in 2006 that basically called citizens of the county together, and charrette was performed, which designated what would happen. And that became the master plan, which was adopted and approved by the City Commission in 1986. Now, just prior to that, we had been recipients of, in 2004, roughly about $15.5 million from the county general obligation bond. And those monies were given in order to develop a museum on Virginia Key Beach Park. That museum was to provide an opportunity for persons to learn about the Black immigrant experience here to Miami. And so really an opportunity for folks to learn about not only how Miami started, but the Black folks that were here and helped to incorporate and found the city. And so, of course, we know that many of those folks were Bahamians. We also know that there were a contingent of Native Americans that were here as well. And so the museum is really set to highlight those immigrant experiences, those Native American experiences, and also the environmental gems that the park possesses. And so through this county GOB, the $15.5 million that were set aside for the building construction of the museum, along with the master plan that was adopted by the city of Miami, that kind of set the roadmap for what would happen and what is to come here at our park. And this was, again, through efforts of many folks who dedicated their time and energy. And I hate to call names, but there were certainly some very influential folks that were there. Dick Townsend, my grandmother, M. Atherley Range, Gene Tinney, Dr. Enid Pinckney, Dr. Dorothy Fields, and many, many, many others who were involved and helped in many different ways to basically be the underpinnings of the task force, and which would later become the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust. And so I thought that bit of history was important to understand kind of where we've come from, because some of the things that we're experiencing today in trying to get the museum built are some of the same things that we were fighting back then.
Such as, tell us about some of those things that we face. Let the people are definitely interested in knowing, and those who don't have all of that information. And I'm very appreciative of the history that you gave. Thank you so very much for that.
Absolutely. And so to just kind of bring it forward, we've been struggling here with getting the museum built, even though we have the money set aside through the county GOB. And we don't know exactly why, but we do know that on occasion, there have been several projects presented to us as development ideas for Virginia Key. And those have ranged from hotels to golf courses to beach resort pavilions, all sorts of things which generally have been private uses proffered for our park. And, as we stated, the desire of the citizens was to see that this property remained open to the public.
Yes.
And available for the public's use and recreation. And so we have beaten back, several attempts to present projects or ideas for development on the island. Most recently, there was a proposition by the city of Miami to place tiny homes just north of our property, not on our property, but just north of our property at a location that does not have infrastructure or anything of the sort. It is actually a former Superfund site, former brownfield site, meaning that there were contamination existing there. But anyhow, this site was proposed as a homeless encampment and the city proposed to build tiny homes there to house the homeless because of our, growing homelessness issue, and acknowledged we do have obviously an issue here with homelessness that needs to be dealt with. But the city and staff and so forth proposed this site on the northern part of Virginia Key Island, again, north of our park proper, as this homeless encampment site where tiny homes would be built, services would be provided for the homeless folks that would live there. We expressed opposition as a board, as a trust board, to this idea because of, first of all, just a lack of information that we had about it. We were never consulted about this homeless encampment site going there. We were simply just made aware that this was a possibility. And so obviously there have been there were many concerns on our part about how this homeless facility would operate, the proximity to our park, and we know how vagrants and so forth occupy some of our parks in other places of our city, and the unsightly, things that go on, under the cover of night and even in broad daylight, at some of our parks with homeless and those sorts of things. So we just felt that this was not an appropriate location, that it could certainly jeopardize not only the enjoyment of our park by our citizens, but also perhaps a destruction or erosion of the things that we have sought to repair there. We've had, countless hours of volunteer help to come out and remove invasive species of plants, plant appropriate plantings, on the site. We've had all sorts of cleanup efforts, beach renourishment efforts by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so there have been millions of dollars that have been poured into the restoration of our park for the enjoyment of all citizens. And in fact, all of the citizens of Miami and Miami-Dade County enjoy this park. We've had this past year over 100,000 visitors to our park.
Right.
And so the placement of the homeless encampment site, less than a mile from where we are located, was of great concern to us. And we at least would have wanted to have input about, this possibility, and we had none. And so, fortunately, at least to date, the idea of the homeless encampment site has been deferred by the City of Miami Commission indefinitely, and we are hopeful that they will identify another location for this homeless encampment site to go if, in fact, they move forward with it. But again, this is just symptomatic and an example, an ongoing example of the challenges that we face at Virginia Key, with different ideas coming forward about what various folks want to see there for private development. And we are determined as a board, as a trust, to follow the community's wishes and to ensure that this park remains open to the public in perpetuity.
So I got to ask you this question because you put it out there. So you said there's $15 million in the general obligation bond in the county
Yes,
earmarked for Virginia Key Beach.
yes, earmarked for the construction of a museum dedicated to the Black immigrant experience. And so that is what the specific designation of the dollars is for.
So now, have you guys already done the renderings? Have you done what the cost estimation is for the project? Where you are along that lines for the project?
Yes. So again, recall we received these GOB dollars in 2004, and
Right.
so we've been working, since that time to put things together to ensure the construction of the museum. Now, we actually had developed architectural renderings and so forth back in the late 2000s, and there were obstacles that came about that did not allow us to go forward with those architectural renderings. As an example, as we went out for bid for the architect for the museum back in the late 2000s, an architect was selected. They came forward, did the renderings that I spoke of, and it was later determined that this architect that was selected had been selected improperly through the city's procurement process. We didn't really understand that, but we were told that the process had to be thrown out. The selection had to be thrown out, and we were going to have to go back out to bid. Then came a series of other issues that came up concerning the size of the museum, how the museum was going to be able to be maintained, and whether we would be able to generate the revenue necessary to maintain it. Of course, as you'll know, as we got into the early 20 teens, of course, the Performing Arts Center here was built, and was built by the county with funding from the county, some of those same GOB dollars, et cetera. And the Performing Arts Center was running at a loss. The county stepped in and basically agreed to provide dollars each year to help support and maintain the Performing Arts Center. After that had been done, however, the county became very critical of other projects coming forward and not wanting to be on the hook, so to speak, for bailing out failing projects or projects that were not able to sustain themselves. So we very quickly were hit with a myriad of things that were requirements from the county in order for us to be able to even access the GOB dollars that we were given. And so we had to put forth a business plan showing how we would generate money to support the museum and ensure that it would not be something that would become something that would be running at a loss and be a cost an ongoing cost to the county. So in the presentation of our business plan, we were told that that was not sufficient. We needed to go back and include some additional things in that business plan. And so again, it's just been one thing after the other that have come up, not issues that we foresaw or could have foreseen,
Right.
but things that have come into place that we've been told that we have to address.
So it seems to me that with the $15 million, you had more than enough to build the museum that you had. If through the first round of iteration of your architectural renderings, if all of those things had been accepted, the building would be standing today. We wouldn't even be talking about this today, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, so now where we are today, we're definitely pushing forward to continue to build this museum. What is it that you need from us, the general public? What can we do to help support and advancing this, the building of the historic museum at Virginia Key Beach?
Yes. So really, the building of the museum is what we are focused on now. That's the last piece of the master plan that remains to be done. Again, the park was opened back to the public in 2008, and we've been operating ever since. All of the original features of the park have been restored, things that folks will remember, like the mini train, the carousel, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
All of those things are in place, and the
Right.
park is beautiful. And so I encourage folks, if they haven't been out, to go out and take your family and enjoy, because it's a beautiful space, has some of the most beautiful vistas in the city. And so do get out and enjoy it. And so again, the last piece of the master plan is us building this museum, which would be the first museum dedicated to Black history of any sort here in Miami, in the city of Miami. And so we're very proud about that. And where we are now is that the City Commission is going to be meeting on October the 13th, which is next week. And so we're asking citizens to come out on October the 13th at 9 a.m. to help support the building of the museum. There is currently a resolution that is set to be heard on next Thursday, the October the 13th date. And that resolution is designed to replace the existing board members, including myself, with members of the City Commission. So the city presented a resolution sponsored by Chairwoman Christine King, which would have given her 5 appointments to the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust, along with an appointment by the mayor and appointment by the city manager. This resolution was presented at the last commission meeting and was approved, but the commissioners sought to change it from what the chairwoman presented. They decided that they wanted to have some say-so also in the project, and they would not accept the chairwoman's proffer of her being able to make 5 appointments herself. They decided that they each wanted to be sitting trust members or have the opportunity to designate a delegate for them. So essentially, this resolution is coming back before the commission on October 13th. And if it passes, it will mean that the city commission will become the trustees of Virginia Key Beach Park. Now, that's concerning for a couple of reasons. Um, as the chairperson of the Virginia Key Beach Trust, myself and the other trust members have some say so, some input into the design and the construction of this museum to ensure that it contains the things that we think it should as a representation of the Black immigrant experience here in Miami. If the city commission is able to become the trustees, who knows how much input we as citizens, we as a board, or we would no longer be a board at that point. We would simply be citizens. Who knows how much input we would be able to have, how much control we would be able to have over the process and the building of the museum, particularly its contents, and also how it gets done. Obviously, you're going to have contractors and so forth who will be selected to build this museum. We, of course, would like to ensure that there is some minority participation, some Black participation in the selection of these contractors and things that will be building the museum, that will also be operating components of the museum. So we're very concerned, not only with that, but again, also with the contents and ensuring that the museum is an appropriate representation of our history.
Yes.
So that's why we feel that we should continue to be trustees. We should continue to be involved. We should continue to be consulted, for the development of this museum, which is going to be dedicated to our history, and not necessarily the history of those who sit on the commission dais. And so this is our call today: is to ask the community to come out to support the trust, to support, most importantly, the building of the museum. At the end of the day, if the trustees are removed, we have to ensure as a community that this museum gets built. This, again, would be the only museum dedicated to Black history and the Black immigrant experience here in our town. And it's just absolutely a shame that we do not have one thus far, but emphasizes the importance of this one being built. And so that's really the message here today, Brother Roberts, is we want the community to come out and support us. If you can't come out on October 13th at 9 a.m. To speak in support of us and our efforts, we'd ask that you would write letters to the city commission, to the mayor, expressing your support, not only for the trust and the trustees, but most importantly for the building of the museum and the building of an appropriate museum. And so that's what we're asking today, Brother Roberts, is for folks to come out, folks to support us in whatever way that you can, and letting folks know that this is important and this has to be done for the posterity of our community.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us, Brother Range. I hear a couple of calls to action. So one is that we need to show up on October 13th. So
Yes.
everyone that's watching this, share the video, make sure that folks know that we need our numbers to be seen on October 13th. And then one demand that we want to have is to maintain the current Virginia Key Beach, Historic Virginia Key Beach Trust Board, because this board was created to preserve the history, the legacy of why Virginia Key Beach Park was created. And so we need that. So one, to show up on the 13th. If you
Yes.
can't show up, two, write a letter to the city commissioners and to the city manager and the mayor. You can find all of that on the website. Just Google it and you can get all of their information there.
Yes.
And three, one of our demands should be that we want to make sure that the trust board stays intact the way that it is, with folks who have some sort of historical tie to this land and to what happened here at Virginia Key Beach. All the board members there are related to folks who were advocating for this. Most of the board members during that time. And lastly, what I would like to say is I'd like for you all to make sure that when you contact your city commissioners, when you contact anyone that's in the legislation, that we encourage them to make sure that funding for the building of the museum at the Virginia Key Beach actually happens and goes through. We've been playing with this for a while now. Let's just go ahead. Money's already set aside. Let's just go ahead and finalize this and start putting shovels in the ground and making sure we can build. We can build everything else in Miami-Dade County. You look through Miami-Dade County, you see cranes all over the sky. We should be able to build this museum on historic Virginia Key Beach Park. So that's just something I want to encourage you all to do. Brother Range, we're going to give you the last words to say some things to give your additional call to action.
Thank you, Brother Roberts. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity. It really is invaluable for us and for our community. And so again, members of the public, community citizens, activists, this is our time. We don't have much here in this city that we can call our own, but this is a part of our history. And if we don't make the efforts to save it, we can lose it. And we certainly don't want that. We know that you don't want that. And certainly our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren deserve better. So please, whatever you can do to support us in whatever way that you can support us, if you can come out on the 13th, please do. If you're able to write a letter, please do. If you can't do that, make a phone call. Call your commissioner, call your mayor. Let them know this is important and you want to see this museum built so that our history is protected, preserved, and can be shared, not only with our children and grandchildren, but with all of the residents of the city of Miami. Because our history, our Black history, is their history. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. You heard the charge. This is for the city of Miami, mind you. So when you reach out to the commissioners, it's the city of Miami, the mayor, city manager, and commissioners. Come out on the 13th. Make sure you support the board, the trust board staying intact as it is, and make sure you support building the museum. Let's hurry this thing up. Let's make sure that it happens because this is our history. Thank you all. And if you have any questions or feedback, please put your information in the link below. This is a pre-recorded event, and we love to hear from you. Please give your comments below.